Hi, everyone. Welcome to Doctors and Coaches podcast. This week's topic is building trust with youth with Dr. Cindy Sandis.
Thank you so much for that. I don't know, Robert, have you had the opportunity to read the book Speed of Trust? Have you ever heard of it?
Yes, I've heard of it. I
Yeah.
read several chapters on that.
Okay. Speed of Trust, for those of you who don't know, was written by Stephen Covey, not the one who wrote Seven Habits, but his son. And if you've ever read the Seven Habits, he talks about his son and his son learning to clean up the yard, he was going to take on that responsibility and how that was a challenge. It was a challenge for the dad to let go and not go do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, right? And it was a challenge for the
Yes.
son to take on that responsibility. Well, The Speed of Trust was written by the son. That is the boy, or that is now the man that was written about in that story. And I had the wonderful opportunity to hear him speak. And he talked about how he learned about trust to the max degree, right? Because in his family, it was a very trusting family and they got along and they communicated and they did all those things that families do. And so I don't know if anybody remembers, probably before any of you were born, uh, Covey, Seven Habits, was by itself. And then there was a thing
Mm,
called a Franklin Planner. And the Franklin Planner is a lot like what you see now, which are these binders that you add calendars to, and every year you can trade them out. And so they were very much about the calendaring it and getting all of the systems right and all of those things. Well, they decided to merge for whatever the reason. Who's to know? But they decided to merge. And Stephen, the son who wrote the book Speed of Trust, was put in charge of making that happen, of making these two companies come together. And he said that on the very first day they met together, all of not the head brass, but all the people underneath, the two leadership teams met. And he said it was abundantly clear that he had his work cut out for him because the Franklin Planner team all came in suits and ties and white shirts. And they were there 5 minutes early and they were prepared and ready to go, and their calendars were out and everything was to be done. And somewhere between the time it was to start and 10, 15 minutes later, the Covey team came in their polos, in their Dockers, right, relaxed with a cup of coffee. And he realized that what was really happening was a merging of two cultures. And in order to do that, you have to trust the other person because they're not like you, right? They don't think like you, they don't walk like you, they don't talk like you. And you have to somehow have the capacity to build trust with them. And that's exactly true when we work with children, right? They're not us. We've already been children. Now we're on the other side. And they have to trust us if they're going to be able to allow us in. And one more example I want to give about that. But so that's how the speed of trust was developed. And one of my favorite quotes from that book is, "You cannot talk your way out of something you behaved your way into." So, in other
mm,
words, if you behave in an untrustworthy way, you can't talk and say, "Oh, you can trust me. It's all right," because people aren't going to believe you. They're going to believe what you do, not your words. But another real example of trust. I don't know if you all know who Warren Buffett is, but Warren Buffett is quite wealthy. He just recently is in the process of stepping down. He invested in Coca-Cola. He's probably worth, I don't know how many billions of dollars. And he's been a leader in his field, and he has groomed the person who's taking over for him. Well, he and Sam Walton, the CEO of Walmart before he passed away, were contemporaries and they were friends. And they had talked on the phone and they had decided to do this thing together. Whatever this business plan was, they were going to do it together. And so Walton talked to his folks and Buffett talked to his folks, and they all went, "Oh, wow, that's going to take 2, 3 years to get it done. That's a long way off. We're not going to be able to do it. We're going to have to double check this. We're going to have to double check that." And both of them said, "No, that's not how it's going to work." So Warren Buffett said, Sam and I'll work it out. And Sam Walton said, don't worry, Warren and I'll work it out. And they had it worked out in about 7 months. And it was because they trusted each other. They knew that what each other said was the truth. And they didn't sugarcoat it. They didn't try and make it sound better than it was. They didn't try and make it sound worse than it was. They didn't blame anybody. They simply said, this is our goal. What can we do together to reach it? And they were able to resolve that, which would have taken, in a traditional way, years, and they were able to do it in months. And so I think that if we understand how important it is to build trust with kids, and one of the very first ways that you do that is by saying what you mean and meaning what you say. So if you say to kids, we're going to have agreements about how we're going to interact and we're going to be respectful, we're going to not talk over people, we're not, right, whatever those guidelines are, and then you don't enforce them, kids know that you're lying and they're not going to follow any of those guidelines because you're not following them. So it's really important to understand and trust that people watch what you do and then they listen to what you have to say. Right? It goes that direction. It doesn't say, oh, I'm going to believe in you. Now, I'm not saying that I never believe in someone, to begin with. I hear their banter, but I'm still leery. I'm still watchful because what I want is to know that they mean it and that they're going to try and do what's best for me. So I know that's kind of a long-winded start to this conversation, but building trust is huge. And
Definitely.
keeping it built is huge because it's easy to destroy. You can destroy it in a nanosecond. And so it's really important that we understand about trust and building that with kids. So that being said, all that blah blah. Do we have a question, or do you want to add first? Do you have something that you'd like to add to that uh,
No,
information?
yeah, I
And
feel
if not, what's our question?
yeah, I feel like you nailed that one pretty well.
Okay. All
The
right.
first question actually goes with what you were just talking about, but it's mainly on why is stress important in youth programs.
Yeah. You know, not all young people have lived in a trust-filled environment, right? And some of them have, but it kind of looks a particular way for their family. And so if we're going to bring kids in so that we can have great times with them, so that we can share what we know with them, so we can do all of those things, they have to believe that we are trustable human beings. It forms the foundation. And until they know that you're trustable, they challenge you because they want to know. Can I trust your word? Will you be fair? Will you treat us all equally? Are you going to have a favorite? Are you going to say one thing and do another? Are you going to say be respectful, and then yammer at us in front of our peers? Right? I mean, they want to know that. And so when we're working with trust, it's foundational. They have to know that we're going to be there for them, that we are going to support them, even if we need to say to them, you need to rethink the choice you made. Because every choice a young person makes isn't a good one, right? I mean, every choice I make is not a good one. That goes without saying. So we have to be there to support them and help them through making the choices that will make sense and that we're not going to, how like somebody will share something with you in confidence and then you go blab it all over, or 3 weeks later you use it against them. We don't do that. If we're going to develop trust, you have to take what they've said and you listen to it and you pay attention to it, but you don't weaponize it. You use it to be there for them so that they can trust you. And it's not about being their friend. A lot of times I think adults want to be kids' friends. They have friends. You need to be the adult and create that safe space around them. So I just think it's foundational in anything we do when we're working with people. If you're working adult to adult, if you're working, right, it doesn't matter. Trust is really, really key and foundational. You have thoughts
I
on that?
agree.
Because I know you've worked with groups of people.
Oh yeah, I had so many stories on that actually, but definitely working in the like in the expanded learning program. there's a lot of students that do build trust, whether it's on my staff or myself, and that really like it just helps them like open up more about like challenges like they're facing. For instance, some of them like are facing bullying, or some of them are facing hardships at home, just
Hmm.
small situations that they go through, and they don't really talk about it unless they have that trust in you, or they
Right.
want to work with you. There's moments where even during school hours, we used to have the principal like calling my staff or call me in, like, because the student wouldn't want to talk to any of them, or like wouldn't want to like open up to them, just because they build that trust with their after school program leaders. So it does play, it just builds that foundation of like it's a safe space for them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you said that brilliantly. And um, on some level, the good part for you is when they say, "Can you come and talk to them because they trust you?" Right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
huge, huge, huge compliment, right?
definitely.
And I think that that's so, so important. And then they can thrive. They can become. Yep.
Yes,
All right. So what about a
definitely.
second question?
So the next question will be, how can I establish trust with youth from diverse backgrounds?
So I'll share something else in a minute, but I think that you as a human have to value diversity. You have to truly, you don't tolerate it, right? It's not about tolerating it. Oh, well, they're different. Fine, I'll suck it up and tolerate it. No, it's about valuing it. It's about saying, wow, isn't it great that we're not all alike? Isn't it great that I can learn from your experience, your family values, the way your family sees things, right? Because that's beautiful. And that's why people love to travel, right? Because they get to experience different cultures. And you go, whoa, I didn't realize that. I didn't know that that was how they saw things. And so I think that it starts by valuing it and letting them know that you value it and asking them questions about it. Okay, so talk to me about that. Share with me how that works with you. Wow, that sounds pretty cool, right? And I think that we don't do that nearly enough. It's almost like we want to put everybody in a blender and pour them out the same. And that's the last thing we want to do. I want you to be the best you, not the best blended. I want you to be your very best you. And I don't think we get there if we don't really value diversity. And then I think the second part is to include them and include them on every level, right? So if you're going to celebrate a day, it's not just about food. It's not just about traditions. It's about them being them and sharing their stories. Now, don't think that I don't like the food part because I do, right? Because I think that's cool. And I love to hear how people celebrate different things. This is October, and we have Halloween coming up. But in Hispanic culture, you celebrate the Day of the Dead on November 1st. Well, I should value
Yes.
that, right? I should learn about that. You can learn about why we do Halloween, and I can learn about why you do the Day of the Dead because it's complementary, but actually honoring the Day of the Dead is a lot better in my opinion than being scared to death from a spook, right? And going, ah.
Yeah.
So I just think that it's important that we understand every culture brings something to the table, and we need to value that. This afternoon, I was at an after school program, and there was a little girl there from India, and one of the things they had in their snack was kiwi. And kiwi is green and it's got these black seeds and if you're not sure of what kiwi is, it's kind of like weird. And she looked at that and her face went, "Whoa, what is this?" And her friend said, "She's scared of the kiwi. She says it doesn't look like you should eat it." And I said, well, she doesn't have to eat it if it makes her nervous, right? And you could see her face relax when her friend said, "It's okay, and we'll take it away, right? We can move it off your tray." And so who knows what her Kiwi experience has been, right? I mean, I don't know, but that was real for her. And I don't know if it's because in India they don't eat kiwis. I don't know that. But I just know that her friend wanted to be sure that she felt included, not frightened, not being teased, not any of those things, right? And I think that that's all part of valuing diverse backgrounds. And really, we ought to all be happy. There's a line I read somewhere, and I often quote it. If every one of us was the same, only one of us would be necessary. So
Okay.
sorry about you, right? So I just think we need to know that valuing diversity and then including and embracing it is hugely important.
Definitely. I was just thinking too, like when we celebrated the holidays in after school in our expanded learning program, we did have students that due to their religion they weren't allowed to like celebrate Halloween or celebrate Christmas. So we just switch up like the holiday. We just say we're just having a um I forgot what we would call it, but we switch it up where like they were able to participate. So we'll tell the
Right,
parents, yes, we're not celebrating as Christmas. We wouldn't use the term Merry Christmas, or we wouldn't use
right.
like holiday terms because that was something that they couldn't do based on their religion. So just being able to do that for them, it did make them feel included. And I was just remembering that, like, because they'll get Friday and they'll be like, oh, our parents are not gonna allow us to come this
Right.
day, and they will be like, okay, well, let's just let us speak to your parent. Let them know that we're not celebrating as a holiday, like we're not using the terms. And sure enough, like the parents were like more welcoming, more opening about them, like being part of the
Yeah,
being included. Hmm.
absolutely. And I don't know of a single parent who hopes their kid's excluded, right? Who would want that,
Yeah.
right? Your kid would be miserable. And yet you'd also want to be very respectful of their viewpoints, right? And so it's finding
Yes.
that balance where you can respect what the parent is teaching the child and then also how they can be a participant and included. Yeah, I think that's important.
Yes.
So,
Definitely.
what else do we have?
Our next question is, what role does consistency play in building trust?
I think it plays every role. If when you walk in today, I go, right? And then the next day you come in and I go, so why don't you trust me, Robert? Right? And then the next day it's somewhere in between. How do you know? You don't know what monster is lying there. If I walk in a certain way, will I get the trusting person? Or if I walk in a certain way, will I be degraded? What's going to happen? And so consistency is the name of the game. I need to be able to trust you every day, not just every other Thursday. I need to know that you're going to be there for me 5 days a week, right? The entire time I'm in program or I'm at school, and that you're going to really, yeah, what's the term? Have my back, right? And that you're there to support me in becoming the best me I can be. And so for me, consistency is everything. It would be better, in my opinion, for you to have, like, if this is the highest level of trust and this is the next highest, and you can't do this highest level of trust consistency with consistency, then do the next level down consistently, right? Because I think that will benefit kids more in the long run because they're not guessing who you're going to be. Are you trustworthy, CynDee, or are you going to be all over my case, CynDee? Are you going to be keeping the confidences I share with you, or are you going to be using them against me? So I just think it has to happen that way. And you have to figure out where you can find that comfortability, right? And then you need to work to see if you can't get to the highest level, but you need to be consistent day in and day out. You need to be the rock of Gibraltar. Yes, I can count on you.
Definitely, just adding on to that, like, the youth, they honestly just they rely more on like predictable routines, like makes it helps them feel safe. just knowing
Mhm.
what they're gonna walk into. So I really like what you said that, like starting the day like with the same with the every session, being the same check-in ritual. Like it just helps them to know what to expect.
Yep. Yep. And then they can trust you, right? It's not a
Yes,
surprise in the best
definitely.
possible way. All right, what else do
Mhm.
we have?
The next question is, how can I teach youth the value of honesty and integrity?
Well, that can be a tough row, especially if when people are honest, they get lambasted, right? So there's a story of a little girl who goes with her mother to her grandmother's house. And when they get to the grandmother's house, the grandmother has been cooking cabbage. And if you've ever smelled cooked cabbage, you know that it doesn't smell so great. I don't even like the taste of it. I love raw cabbage, but I'm not into cooked cabbage. And the little girl said to her mom, "Ooh, grandma's house stinks," which was true. It did. And the mother said, "Don't say that. That's mean." And the little girl said, "But it does stink." "Well, you'll hurt grandma's feelings. So if grandma feels bad, it's your fault, right?" Well, what did you teach that child? You taught that child to not be honest. Now, you could have said, "I agree with you. Cooked cabbage does not smell good." But instead of dwelling on that, what else could we say that's complimentary or kind, right? And that teaches a whole different lesson than going, "It doesn't stink." No, it does. Anybody who walked in would tell you the same. It's a fact. So don't do that. So if you want kids to be honest, you have to allow them to be honest even when it's hurtful. And you have to allow them to be honest. And then if you don't want them to be that honest, or you want them to learn the difference between being blindly honest and finding something to be grateful for, then teach them that. But I think honesty is modeled, and we all tell white lies, right? We all do that. And so we've got to be careful to be honest with kids. Then there's integrity. And I think integrity by itself is an interesting word. And the reason I think that is this: integrity means being of singular purpose. Okay? That everything is integrated and you're on a single path moving forward. And that sounds like a wonderful thing, doesn't it? Adolf Hitler
Yes.
was on a singular path during World War II, and that path was not moral, it was not right, but it was a singular path. What he wanted was to bring Germany up. He wanted them to blame the Jews and try and do something about eliminating them, right? So he had a single purpose. So to me, when I see the word integrity, I think, yes, yes, I want you to have integrity, but I mean the kind with a moral compass, with a true north, right? I sit in front of the northern lights and you sit behind, right, with the stars behind
Mhm.
you. Where's true north? What is it that you truly believe? What is it you truly value? What is it that you think it means to be a good human? All of those things come. And if you combine that with integrity, meaning that you're focused on those principles that guide you, you're golden. So I just think that we need to be sure. And most people just consider integrity being moral, having a moral compass, but it truly means being of singular purpose, doing everything you can to accomplish your goals. And so, if you're not moral, then you can do all kinds of not good things to accomplish your goals, right? But we want to have that true north perspective, and we have to teach kids about that. And there are so many traits, right? Loyalty, fairness, honesty, hard work, perseverance. Those are all parts of being true north and character. And that's really what we're looking for, in my opinion, with integrity.
Definitely, I like what you said. I mean, I would say to, like moderate yourself, like model it yourself,
Mhm.
is
Yep.
Definitely.
So, and
Uh,
you can't talk to one kid and badmouth another kid to them because what you just told them is that when you're not here, I'll badmouth you, right? And so we just need to realize that we're modeling all the time. I agree.
oh yeah.
And that's
Mhm.
hard work to be a role model 100% of the time, right?
Oh yeah.
We're all
Which
gonna muff up, so
still
forgive
sometimes.
yourself and move forward. Forgive
Oh
yourself,
yeah,
apologize, and move forward.
definitely.
Yep.
So next question is, how can I use active listening to build trust?
So the key ingredient in active listening is listening to understand. Now, I probably have said this before, but in Western culture, which is what we live in, we often debate. I'm right, you're wrong, do what I say, right? I mean, it's that environment. I'm right. I've thought this through. I know what it is, and you need to fall in line. That's not very trust building, right? The
Right.
second thing we do tend to do in Western culture is to be more pleasant, and we discuss and we say, all right, I'm going to listen to what you have to say, but the whole time in my brain, I'm thinking about how I'm going to answer you so that you'll understand that I'm right and you ought to do what I say, right? That's not active listening. That's not listening to understand. That's listening so that you can make your point. So
Oh,
when we do active listening, I want to know what you think, not how I see it. How do you see it? And then I'm gonna check for my understanding. I'm gonna say, okay, let me tell you back what I think you said. And I'm paying attention to your words, I'm paying attention to your body language, I'm paying attention to your facial expressions, I'm paying attention to your tone, I'm paying attention to all of that, right? And I'm gonna say, so what I think I heard you say is this, am I right? And then you could elaborate on that, right? Or you could say, no, you're totally wrong. Let me explain it again. Because I need to be working in active listening to understand you. I
right.
need to seek first to understand before I'm trying to be understood. And so to me, when you do that and you're really listening, that's important. And the second thing I say is this. So this audience is seeing us side by side on the screen, right? And I can move this way and I'm further away from you, right? Or I can move this way and I appear to be getting closer to you. And then if you move toward me, we would be closer and closer together, right? The idea
Mhm.
isn't to blindly follow someone when you trust, but blindly using and not blindly using active listening, but it's using it so I can get as close to you as I can in understanding without giving me up, without forgetting what I stand for. And so to me, that is why active listening is important because I'm not listening so I can tell you off or tell you what you ought to think. I'm listening so I can understand how you see it so that I can explain how I see it and maybe we can find common ground. So that's how I'd
I
answer
like
that.
that. Definitely. Like I like how you mentioned, like do maintain eye contact because the kids really enjoy, really like that's the way they know like you're listening to them.
Right.
And
Well,
in
babies, have you ever had a baby like maybe a 9 month old take your face and make you turn and look at them? Right? Because they
yes,
know if you're looking at them, you're paying attention,
paying
right?
attention to
And
them.
and
Yeah.
older kids just have learned not to take hold of your face. Still want you to look at them, but they don't take hold of your
Yeah,
face. They've learned
definitely.
that.
Just
Yeah.
remembering too, like in the expanded learning, like I have kids that like will tell me stories, and then like if I wouldn't look at them, they'd be like, "You're not even listening to me," and I'll be like, "Yes, I
Right,
am." Like so, I would have to repeat what they were telling me. They're like, "Okay, okay, you're listening," but
right.
definitely like eye contact it plays a big role in that.
Absolutely. They went,
Yeah,
yep, yep. Now you're listening to me. For sure. For sure.
yeah. So
Okay, what
next
else do we
question
have?
is, what strategies help youth feel seen and heard?
Well, certainly active listening does, right? I mean, truly listening to them.
Yeah.
And I also think asking them questions. I think that too often we tell kids what to do. We say, do this, do this, do this,
Oh
do
yeah.
this. which is very enabling. That's not empowering. So I think that we have to ask questions. What do you think? How might we do this? How do you think this will work out if we try this, right? Even if you have an idea, listen to them. What do they have to say? So I think that you have to listen. And then I think that not only do you just need to acknowledge with eye contact and nodding, you need to confirm. So what I'm hearing you say is blah, blah. Is that correct? And then when they tell you, yes, that's correct, then you know that they know that you heard them. And I think that that's really, really important because too often we don't we don't really confirm for kids that we've heard them. And they need to be heard. I don't know of anybody who doesn't need to be heard, right? To know that somebody somewhere is listening to me.
Definitely, and I would like to add on to that, like use the names often and like validate the emotions.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
Definitely. So moving
And
forward.
don't call you always call you honey or sugar. Call me my name, right? And then I know you
Oh
know
yeah.
it's me, not somebody else.
Oh no. The next question is how can I address trust issues caused by past negative experiences?
That's a challenge for sure. Um, so I think that needs to be some sort of understanding about this as well. If you've ever taken anything in youth development, there are things that happen to children before they have language, right? And they could be painful things, right, that happen to them. But they don't have language, which means they can't really talk about it. But they can still feel it, right? They feel it inside of themselves, but they can't talk about it because they don't have words. The second thing I think we need to know is that it's probably not until about the end of third grade, beginning of fourth grade, so somewhere between kids being 8 and 9, that they are able to start to think abstractly. So trust isn't very concrete unless you make it concrete and say, you can trust me to roll the ball to you, and then you roll the ball to them. Can I trust you to roll the ball back to me? Yes, you can trust me to roll the ball back to you, right? So if you've done some things where they are actually experiencing trust in a very granular way, a concrete way, then I think that you have a chance to ask the question, has there ever been a time when someone said to you they would roll the ball to you in a metaphorical way, right? That they said they would do something for you and they didn't, and you felt bad about it. And then
Yes,
you can start for them to talk about that. Well, what could that person have done that would have helped you trust them more? Right? So you talk about it, and you are not judging that person and you're not having them judge it. You're talking about how do you feel? What would have helped you feel differently? Right? And then you can also say, sometimes people would like to do all those things that are right and helpful for other people, but they have their own stuff, so they just can't at that moment. Right? And not to excuse it, but to help kids understand that that's okay. We're not finding fault with anybody. We're trying to look at your situation and talk about what can we do together so that you can be more confident and trusting. And I think you can co-create that with children, not just you creating it and dumping it on them.
definitely, and just to add on to that, like I was just remembering, like, we had a lot of patience with this one student that had a one-on-one. He was a very I don't want to say problematic kid during the day, but he was like a handful during the day. And they added him to the after school program. And I had already read his book about like what was going on. So
Right.
with him, what we did is we had his counselor like come into the after school program with him and stayed with him for like the first we want to let him stay there for actually for like I think it was like 30 minutes or an hour, and then we let him go home. And then
Mhm.
gradually, like each day, like the week
Mhm.
went by, he didn't need the counselor anymore, and he didn't need to, he wanted to stay longer because he liked the activities. But definitely no, it just came down to like us like having that patience with him, and like us like accommodating to his needs, that like that the build that trust, that because I know he had gone through a lot of negative experiences that like got him to not trust anybody.
Right.
But like that just came to my head, and I was like, oh, I was like,
Yeah.
we had a student like that.
They did that, right? And I think
Yeah,
that there's two kinds of I think when you talked about the negativity, I want to talk about that a little bit. Negativity can be real, which is probably what you're talking about with this child. They had
yeah.
experienced real negative things. It is also possible to make that up in your mind. Everybody, everybody's
Mm.
against me. Everybody's picking on me. I'm the victim. I work harder than everybody, but that nobody understands, right? So if you tell yourself a narrative long enough that nobody is trustworthy, pretty soon you won't trust anybody, right? And so
Oh,
that's one of the
100%.
things we can do is to work on our own narrative. And that doesn't mean you trust blindly, but it means, okay, let me see how I can build trust with this person, even if they've let me down in the past, right? What is it? What baby steps can I take to build that trust up again? And I think that that's important because we all make mistakes, every single one of us. And don't we
Oh,
deserve somebody to provide us enough grace to work our way out of the mistake we made? And then we have to learn from it. You can't make a mistake and then make it again next week and again next week and again next week and right and go, oh, sorry, because you're not really sorry. That there's a difference between being sorry and repenting and saying, I'm not doing it anymore. So we're looking for that with trust, right? That
oh,
people do things that are not trustworthy, but it doesn't mean that they can't learn to do things that are trustworthy, right? So we,
trustworthy.
we need to give grace.
Yes.
But I think that
Like,
I think that's how you get things through. And I don't think you pry and probe and dig. I think you allow space for the child to grow in trust with you so that they will willingly share with you. Not
I like.
share with me by gum, right? I think it just has to be the other way. You're going to
Yes,
build trust. Hey,
definitely.
what?
So moving forward,
Yeah,
our
okay.
next question is our next question is, how can I involve families in trust building efforts?
One of the things that we have the opportunity to do either during the school day or in expanded learning is to have parents come in for little mini workshops, right? And
Mhm.
conversations. And the parents who would like to be better parents will show up. And so one of the things you could do is talk through trust. And one of the
Mhm.
things I like to do with adults, there are in the book Speed of Trust, there are 13 trust behaviors that have been identified as behaviors that will build confidence in one another that you are trustworthy. And it's really interesting because the way they define it in the book, it really is interesting. They say, let's say one of the trust behaviors is to talk straight. Okay, don't sugarcoat, right? That kind of thing. So the first bar or the first paragraph says, "This is what talk straight means. Mean what you say what you mean. Don't try and sugarcoat it. Be kind, but be clear and honest." Right? So it tells you that. Then it tells you things you might say to promote that. So it gives you like sentence starters. So I want to be straight with you. There are a few things I'm not at liberty to tell you, but I will tell you as much as I can, right? That you would say that. Or here's the big picture. Now let's come down and look at the pieces of it, right? There are things that you can do to talk straight. That's great. This is what it is. This is what ways you can talk about it. Then it tells you what it's not. It's not this. Talking straight isn't spinning it. It's not sugarcoating. It's right, it tells you that. Those three are great, but the most interesting thing that they identify is what they call the counterfeit. And the
Mhm.
counterfeit is what people do to make you think that you're experiencing what it is when you're really experiencing something else. So let me give you an example. I don't know if have you ever listened to like a presidential debate or where they
Oh
have
yeah.
two sides, okay? And then they go off, right? And the news comes on and says, "Let me tell you what you heard." And I'm thinking, I don't need you to tell me what I heard. I know what I
Mhm.
heard, right? I listened with my own two ears and I interpreted it my way, and I don't need you to try and mix it up, right? And so
Mhm.
that would be the counterfeit. Here, let me spin it for you so that I can tell you how that should have felt to you. No, we don't do that. That's not talking straight. You need to talk straight so I can listen straight, and then I don't need anybody to twist and turn it. But anyway, they go through these 13 habits, and that's how they do it. They define it. They say, this is how you can talk and interchange with one another. Here's what it isn't, and beware of the counterfeit. And I think that as adults, we always need to be aware of the counterfeit because when we model the counterfeit, it's counterproductive.
Oh yes. I agree with that. How you were saying have like little family events. So I do
Mhm.
remember like we used to have we always had like the cheerleaders perform, and a lot of a lot of those girls, like it was their first time like cheerleading, so their parents were still kind of hectic, like a little skeptical about their like what they're going to wear, like what was their outfit like that was their main thing. So we'll make sure that we'll send them like a picture of like what they're going to wear, and they would know ahead of time. And if they feel like it wasn't appropriate for them, they will try to like modify it like towards their liking.
Right.
So that built a lot of trust towards the parents. Another thing too is like talking to them a lot, like having greeting the parents, having conversations with them on a daily basis about their kids. That definitely helps the parents. Like I had a lot of parents that trusted me a lot based on like just because I would always like check in on them. I was talk to them about their kid, like, or they'll come to me about their daily issues, and it'll be like, oh, we're just after school, but let me see what I can do for you during the day. Like, which will be
But
funny.
thanks
And
for
then I'll be
sharing.
like, yeah, yeah, I know. So then I'll have to go and like, talk to the principal, be like, hey, like they feel comfortable telling me this, like, and they'll be like, how come they don't tell us? I'm like, I don't know. They just don't trust you guys enough yet.
Right.
But
Well, and who
yeah,
sees them every single day after school? You do.
yeah, definitely.
Who talks to them every single day after school? You do. Who asks them about their life? You do. Who talks to them and
Definitely.
praises their kid? You do. When do they see the principal? Once a year at back to school
Oh
night?
no.
And they're on the
Yeah.
stage and right, they're not interacting. So time and care and spending time matters, right? And if you
Oh
want people
yes.
to trust you, they have to know you. And you can't just be this object that's up, you know, on the stage. So absolutely, I can understand completely why they would talk to a person they talk to every single day that they consider a friend than somebody that they
Yeah.
don't even know who they are, right?
Definitely this.
Yeah, makes
I agree
total
with that.
sense to me. Total sense. Okay, I think we have time for what, a couple more maybe?
Yes, we do.
I mean,
Next
I'll
question
scrunch
is,
up so I can look at the clock. I can't, it's teeny tiny in the corner.
oh yeah. Next question is, what activities promote trust among peers?
So I think one of the biggest things, so here's as in adult to adult or kid to kid. Um, I think one of the most important things to do with a peer is to show loyalty. Because again, if I talk to you, if we're in a group and you're there and I talk about someone who's not there in an unkind way, then you know I'm going to talk unkind things about you when you're not there, right? And so when we're interacting with peers, I think we need to be loyal. I think we need, and you don't have to say, oh, Susie's the best, the greatest, the most wonderful ever, if that's not true. But you can say what is positive about Susie. The other day, and so maybe somebody else is snapping about her, but you can say, well, the other day I really appreciated when Susie came to my rescue in the cafeteria and was willing to watch over my kids because I needed to step out with one student. So you can find a way to praise. So to me, with peer interactions, I think loyalty is way up there on the top of the list. The second thing I think is talking straight. Say what you mean what you say. And I think that goes a long ways for adults to trust you. So to me, those two are two of the most important. Not that all 13 aren't important because they are, but adult to adult or peer to peer, I think it's that. And with young people, you know, part of being young is that today you're my best friend and tomorrow I hate your guts, right? And then the next day after that we're best friends again. So to be able to help them to not, when we're on the outs, talk bad about you, because I know that we're going to be back together shortly, I think is important. And that's what I mean by loyalty.
Definitely. I was just thinking about like always incorporate like team building games. That builds a lot of trust. I know we used to have this with our staff when we used to have PD trainings. We used to have like small games with groups and groups, and
Mhm.
I feel like that would like always keep them, that always like have them interact with each other, especially at the beginning of the year when we had new
Mhm.
staff. To get to know them and to have like a little bit of trust. We used to group them with like with staff that they didn't know or were like
Mhm.
always interacting with, and we always
Right.
had like team building games, and that helped a lot just to like build some type of like to promote some type of trust like with them to start off the year. So
Right. And
it's definitely a lot of things you can.
did you find when you were working with staff that what they do is they all want to sit or talk to their friends? They don't want to talk to
Oh
that
yeah, 100%.
stranger over there,
A
right?
hundred percent, 100%. Yeah. So definitely that's one thing that we would always incorporate, like, because we used to get all the sites in one building. So
Hmm.
that well, the first thing that that was one of the rules is like when you're gonna do this activity, it has to be somebody you don't know. And they'd be like,
Yeah.
like they didn't want to like break the groups, but they found out like we'll do like the get to know them, like tell me like four
Right.
things about your new person, like what they like and blah blah. And yeah, and then next thing they met new people, and it just gets the trust going like for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you as the leader have to be intentional about that, or that's not going to happen.
Oh
It's
yeah.
almost like they go into cliques, right?
Yeah, they
These
go
are
to
my
small
buddies,
cliques.
right? And I'm not going
Yeah,
anywhere else. Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
It's like the kids.
But yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. All right. Do we have
Mhm.
time for one more?
Yes, we do. So next
Okay.
question is, how can I use storytelling to foster trust?
Well, I think that storytelling will helps make a point always, right? Storytelling is what makes things real. And
Mhm.
and I think that that's why it's so important. And if you don't have a story per se, let's say you just think, I don't know what that story would be, then think about a quote, something that you could look up, and a quote about trust or a quote about inclusion or a quote about being loyal, right? That kind of thing. If you don't have a story to tell. And then the last thing that you can do is to work with the kids and ask them when was a time when you felt like somebody was really loyal to you when they could have turned their back on you, right? And then you can start to collect stories that other people tell you rather than just be a story that you've experienced yourself. So I think those are three things that I would encourage people to do, and know that storytelling matters. And if nothing else, you could talk about the ropes course. I think that's what it's called. And one of the things that people have to do is you line up two in a row, right? And this person has to just let go and fall back, and the other person catches them,
Oh
right?
yeah.
That's huge trust. You can talk about that kind of an activity, And I'm not saying that I would rush right out and have kids do that with kids, but that is a story that you could tell. So I think you can find stories, but also you can find quotes and you can talk to kids about a time when they felt like they could trust a person and what it was that that person did that made them feel that way. So I'm
Definitely,
going to let you
sharing
have the
like
last word here.
yeah, I was just saying like sharing like your personal like vulnerabilities, like stories, how you like overcame like building connections, all of those are like great examples of like how to use the storytelling just to foster trust. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So just, I said I was going to let you have the last word, and I am. I'm just going to say this one thing. I lied. Just know that people say, once you break trust, you can't get it back. I don't believe that's true. I think that if you break trust with someone and you have a conversation and they are truly repentant and they are trying to do better, then why would you not extend to them the grace and not blindly, not going full speed, but going, okay, step by step, we can rebuild this. So trust can be fragile, but it can also be what will carry you through to the very end. Now it's
Right
your
there.
turn.
Yeah. So we're good.
All right. So you want to tell these people goodbye?
Oh yeah. So thank you guys for joining us. Like always, if you guys have any questions, put them down in our comment section and we'll answer them as well. If you guys would like Cindy to share any like tips or any like ebooks about this topic, you guys can put your email and she will definitely send you guys something for this topic.
Absolutely. So go forth, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you all next time.